whatever. They've already threatened me. What are they going to do to me? Just kill me? I mean, yeah. Let them be mad.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network, and this is the inaugural episode of the Ken Harbaugh Show, which is dedicated to holding accountable those who would threaten our democracy and the powerful people who enable them. This is a continuation of everything I've been doing with the MeidasTouch Network, including Burn the Boats and the Against All Enemies documentary. Please click on the link below to subscribe to the podcast version of the show. We're starting with someone special. Pam Hemphill is known in MAGA circles as the MAGA Granny. She's been name-checked by none other than Donald Trump as someone he claims was wrongly persecuted for her actions on January 6th. That's her in the Capitol on that day. But Pam's story since then defies everything MAGA and Trump would have you believe. She went to jail for what she did, 60 days in one of America's toughest prisons, and openly admits that she deserved it. She pled guilty because, as you'll hear, she knows she was guilty. Pam found her way out of the cult of Trump. That's how she herself describes it, and is now campaigning for Vice President Harris. She is why we do shows like this on the MeidasTouch Network. I didn't know until I had her on camera that she's a fan, not just of MeidasTouch, but of the shows I've hosted, Burn the Boats and Against All Enemies. It is precisely for people like Pam Hemphill, who are desperate to know the truth about MAGA and to understand the dangers posed by someone like Donald Trump, that we do this work. If ever there was validation that channels like this matter, it's people like Pam Hemphill. And so I am deeply honored to share our first episode of the Ken Harbaugh Show, this conversation with former J6er and MAGA Granny, who has now become their worst nightmare, about what drew her out of the cult and what we need to do between now and November to crush MAGA once and for all. Before we get into it, just a reminder of how MAGA and Trump are trying desperately to erase what actually happened on January 6th. Next week, they're holding a gala at Trump's Bedminster Golf Club in celebration of the insurrectionists. Here's the announcement for that. And here's just one clip of many of Trump calling the J6 rioters hostages.
Well, thank you very much. And you see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly and very unfairly, and you know that, and everybody knows that. And we're going to be working on that soon. The first day we get into office, we're going to save our country, and we're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots, and they were unbelievable patriots and are. You see the spirit, just cheering, they're cheering while they're doing that, and they did that in prison, and it's a disgrace, in my opinion.
I'm so honored today to have Pam Hemphill on the show. We've been corresponding over Twitter and text leading up to this interview, and at one point she said she knew all of those people in the Against All Enemies documentary that I produced right here on the MeidasTouch Network. Pam, you were there on January 6th. You had a journey up until that point, and an even more compelling and fascinating journey after it. But tell me about not just that day, but the aftermath, and seeing depictions like Against All Enemies and realizing you were in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah. You know, I was so excited. It's like being invited to Disneyland. It was going to be a huge rally. We had a few small ones here, a couple hundred people. And it was always like a community. We're all cheering on Trump, you know, because, you know, the Democrats are going to turn this into a communist nation, and we're going to stop that. And it was so much fun. I got down there a little too late, though, at 10:30 in the morning, and the crowd was so big, and I had 40 stitches. I couldn't allow myself to get around a big crowd like that. So somebody had said Trump was going up to the Capitol, and I said, the Capitol, why is he going there? And he's just having a speech. But I thought, okay, I'll get up there before everybody else. You know, I'll walk up there. And on the way there, I ran into the Proud Boys. And I started asking them, because I thought the Proud Boys will be with Trump, and I could because see, I'm a citizen journalist in Boise. I had like 30,000 followers. I was their eyes that day. And I said, are we going inside the Capitol? Oh my God. Of course, I thought legally. And they said, no, we're not going inside. But one of the journalists that I asked that was with them, their camera lady, said, yeah, there's a few planning on going inside. And I thought, oh, maybe they've been picked by Trump. So, but they left and I went up front and that's when it all started. The craziness.
What was the moment when you realized that something awful was happening, that this was not a peaceful protest by a bunch of tourists with love in the air, as Donald Trump put it, but that something truly menacing and anti-democratic was happening?
Well, when I was up front, now remember, I'm on the east side. I don't know about that. I hate to minimize my side because the media was showing all the violence on the other side. So I don't know that's happening. And I have this naive belief that the Republicans leave the Capitol cleaner than when they left it, right? Well, I'm all for yelling and holding your signs, but you do not push barriers. You do not push officers. Nobody's going to do that. That would be crazy, right? Maybe a few idiots. But all of a sudden, William Dunphy, that's his name, he got arrested, started pushing the barriers. Well, he was talking to an officer, and I turned to him, I said, what are you guys talking about? He says, we're negotiating. They're going to let us go to the steps. So I'm thinking that's what's happening, that they're trying to get in too quick. And that's all, like at a football game or a concert. So I was panicking, though, when they started pushing the barriers, and an officer pulled me over. But I'm thinking, well, they're letting us in, so I'm going around telling everybody, come on in, it's your house. Oh, my God. When I realized something was wrong, they're not coming in, the officer said, no, they're not letting them in. You get back over that barrier. As soon as I got back over, they did it again, and this time they were successful. So I ran to the captain. The captain said, go behind the officers at the steps, and I'll tell them you're coming, because I told him I had stitches. I didn't know what to do. It's like a buffalo coming at you. You're panicking. I got up there, but they pushed me towards an officer, and I was thinking real quick, and I let myself go back so I don't land on the officer. And these wonderful patriots stepped on my head, broke my glasses, pulled out my shoulder, cut my knee. I wasn't breathing. I would have died if it wasn't for the Capitol Police officers that day.
Tell me about that. The Capitol Police officers were protecting you, who just moments earlier were telling people to breach the barrier.
Oh, yeah, they were protecting everybody. They didn't care who you were. They were doing their job, and they were not starting anything. I have a video that shows they're just standing there at the barriers. They're not pepper spraying anybody or doing anything. They're just doing their job. But on the other side, because a lot of the propaganda is the officers started it all. No, it's not true. Yeah. They're trying to get the crowd away.
Yeah, yeah. You obviously were captured on film, and there was a knock on your door sometime later. I want to hear about that, but the point is that you owned up to it. You accepted responsibility, and you've said many times since then, I'm just going to read the tweet, I wasn't a victim of J6. I was a volunteer. How did that realization dawn upon you? Was it before or after the knock on the door? Was it a process? How did you come to that?
Well, in your gut you've done something wrong. It's not like there's an intent to break the law. When you're in a group in a crowd like that, you're not thinking, oh, I'm trespassing. It doesn't come to you. Now, know you've done something wrong if you push a barrier or hurt an officer. That's obvious. But I'm not thinking like I'm breaking the law. But they help you with the gaslighting. Everybody kept telling me, Pam, don't plead guilty. You were innocent. It's our house. You had a right to be there. And I thought, I did? But not according to my attorney. He says, no, that house was locked down to everybody that day. So they help you. But I knew in my heart and soul I was wrong. It doesn't matter what my intent was. It was trespassing, period, black and white. I broke the law.
You went from that, though, admitting culpability, pleading guilty, because, as you said, you were not a victim, you were a volunteer, to actually pushing back against the lies and the propaganda and recently holding a Harris for President sign in Boise, Idaho. Tell me about that journey from being part of the insurrectionist crowd to seeing the light and campaigning for Vice President Harris.
Well, actually, I'm the one that started the first J6 Defendant X space. And that gentleman you have on your documentary, I forgot his first name, but he goes by the General. He's the one that hosted that space for me. And we got together because I didn't know how to host at the time, how to use Twitter. So he got it started. And I kept telling them, you know, I know I'm going to plead guilty. And he would push back and say, you're not guilty. You're not guilty. And there were issues going on. And I didn't agree with standing up for those that were harmed the officers. I thought, why are they standing up for these guys? Some would come in. They would have phone calls on space. And I thought, I don't want to hear from this guy. I was angry that they hurt the officers. But that started the whole smear campaign against me. So I went and started the J6 gaslighting space. And all the sedition hunters, and I mean real researchers, came in and helped me with facts. Because I thought, we're going to stop the spin of this J6 narrative. And what had happened, Ryan Samsel, he's the one with the red Trump hat that Epps whispered in his ear. Gateway Pundit put out an article that he had lost his whole eyeball while he was in jail. Come to find out, because I talked to one of his attorneys, which his attorneys were assigned by Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell had given him attorneys, that he had been beat up inside the jail, but he didn't lose his eye. He had called somebody the N-word, and that's why he got beat up. And then his gift sending go went way high. And I thought, this is a grift. I mean, they're just trying to get money. That's all. Not get facts and truth. They're lying. Every one of them were lying about what's happening inside the jail. And that got me upset. It's like, come on, you guys, we'll stand up for our liberties and our rights, but not through lying and propaganda.
You shot this video on January 6th, standing right next to Jacob Chansley, one of the most recognizable figures from that day. I'm going to play the video and we'll talk about it.
Ho, Kamala Harris. Anyone, John Roberts is another great example. Anyone and everyone who's associated with China, anyone and everyone who's associated with the globalists.
It's like the enemy of the money.
Anyone and everyone who's saying Joe Biden won the election, people like Mitch McConnell, okay, all these rhino Republicans, every single one of them is a traitor.
You knew all of these people, Pam. During the insurrection, you were with them. In the aftermath, you went to jail. You stayed in touch with many of them who remained in jail long after your sentence ended. Why do you think you're one of the only ones who was able to extricate yourself from the cult-like thinking around Trump and MAGA?
I contribute some of it to the fact, and I don't break my anonymity, but I do. I'm trying not to promote. I'm in a program, a 12-step program, and I just celebrated 45 years sober. And those steps are spiritual principles. And I knew in my heart I was wrong. I just knew it. And I needed to make amends. And going to prison and paying your fines didn't feel like enough. And when CNN got a hold of me because of what Trump had said, horrible about my story, I got upset. I didn't want to be used out there as an example of what the DOJ is doing against J6 defendants, because it's not true. DOJ was not weaponized against me. I broke the law, but they're using me, and I thought, nobody gave me permission to say MAGA granny. It was Carlson Tucker that gave me that name. My brother calls me in prison and says, you're being called MAGA granny. I said, oh my God, don't put me out there in the news. But when CNN called me and asked me to come do an interview and talk about it, it took me 3 times I said no to them. But then I said, no, I've got to step out. I've got to share that this is a cult and this is wrong what they're saying out there. And it was hard to do, but I'm glad I've been doing it now.
You're not just doing it from the safety of your living room over Twitter or in in interviews like this, you're putting yourself out there in a very real way. Here's a clip of you being escorted, having caused no disruption whatsoever, but being escorted out of a Trump event because they recognize you.
But I gotta be told what I did wrong.
It's okay. No, but it's a private event, man. They asked you to leave. We have to ask you to leave.
The campaign asked you to leave?
Huh?
The campaign asked you to leave?
I don't know. Who's asked me to leave?
Yes.
I don't know who's asked me to leave. Why? For what? What have I done, sir?
Ma'am, I don't know.
Can I talk to somebody?
No, ma'am. They asked you to leave. That's all we
No.
can do. It's a private event. We have to ask you to leave. That's all.
Pam, what is it like being in a space like that, knowing how much people despise you for simply telling the truth?
Oh, yeah, it was horrible. I thought, this is a free nation. Aren't we allowed in these events? They said it was a private event. A private event, I think you are invited. You have to pay for it. It wasn't a private event. But I had talked to some of the campaign members there, and I guess they figured out who I was, because they said, what do you want? What are you wanting to do? I wanted to get up front. I said, I was with a journalist from Finland, and we just wanted to be there just in case he passes by. I'm not a person that would disrupt anything. You know, I'm not going to yell at him where he's talking. But if he was going to pass by, I was just going to say, Trump, do you know that I went to prison for your lies? But I didn't get the chance. Somebody found out who I was. I guess they recognized me and kicked me out. And I thought, why are they kicking me out? I didn't do anything wrong.
Talk to me about that time in prison. Obviously, it began with that knock on the door. Did you expect that?
You know, I think what happened, because I'm very well known, all the Boise police here know me by name because of all my events I've been to, and I was with Ammon Bundy, so they know me. I think they were, this is my guess, I was under the care of chemotherapy at the time. I think they waited, because when they arrested me, and I want to get rid of that lie, there's a lie out there that a granny was dragged down the steps. I think they waited to arrest me till I was done with everything, because when they showed up, I said, oh, I'm glad you're here. I've just been worried if I'm going to go to prison or not, or get arrested for this. Nobody could tell me anything. But, what was I going to say? Oh, they treated me so good. I'm telling you, there's like 7 officers and a female officer. And when I went into the bathroom with her to change my clothes, I could start crying right now, because she put her arms around me. No, I'm sorry. She wanted to. She came close. She said, I can't touch you. But I'm starting to get emotional about remembering. She says, it's going to be okay. You'll be out by 1 o'clock for your next appointment. You know, that's the FBI, how bad they are, right? And then I said to the FBI agent, I said, I need to call my brother. I got to let people know what's happening. He said, no, you can't call, but don't worry. You'll be out by 1. And I said, well, I got to vape, because I vape. And he says, oh, go ahead. It was like, and then I'm going downstairs, and the Boise police said, oh, there you are, Pam Hemphill. My God, where's your handcuffs? And I said, handcuffs? They better not put me in no handcuffs. I was joking with him. But he said, I've never seen anybody arrested by the FBI that weren't handcuffed. I said, oh, well, that's good. No, it was a scary experience, because I've never been to jail in my whole life. I didn't know what to expect.
How did the sentencing go, and how long were you in for?
Well, the actual arrest is only 3 or 4 hours. It wasn't very long. And then I was released at 1 o'clock. But it took 8 months or so before the actual sentencing date. And what happened, my judge, Lambert, he said he had given the wrong sentence to a J6, or I think he had probation or something. And she went out to the media and told the media the opposite of what she had told him. And he was disgusted with it. She had lied to the judge that she was sorry, and she admitted her fault, and then goes out and says the DOJ is weaponized against her. So he said, I made a bad mistake, and so I'm not going to do that again. I believe you, Miss Hemphill, everything you're sharing, but I'm not going to make that mistake again. So he went with the recommendations of 60 days prison, but that's okay. I get it. I'm not upset.
Yeah. Were you in prison with other J6 defendants or not?
No, Dublin prison. It's the worst prison in the United States. In fact, They got shut down because the warden had been having relationships with the women. There were drugs in there. There's a big article about it. You could look it up. But I want to speak out for Michelle West. It's free Michelle West. She's a beautiful black Muslim lady. And the women were planning on putting drugs in my room. And if there's drugs in your room, you could get a 4-year sentence. They hated Trump, of course. It was 95% cartel women. And Michelle West says, what are you doing in this unit? Only lifers are in this, 10 years or more. What are you doing in here? And I said, I don't know. I'm just in here. And she says, misdemeanors are never in this unit. So I was in the worst unit you can imagine. And I'm lucky to be here. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be out. She saved my life.
Wow. You didn't just get out of prison and move on with your life. You committed yourself to telling the truth about what happened on January 6th, about the FBI and the DOJ doing their best to seek justice for those who perpetrated that attempted insurrection. And you have since endorsed Vice President Harris for president. How has that experience been in a pretty conservative place like Boise, Idaho? I'm from Ohio. I understand conservatism, and grew up in Alabama, but Boise is its own kind of conservative bubble. How has that conversion been received?
Oh, not well at all. Yeah, I was with Ammon Bundy. This is the far, far, far right country. The white supremacists, you name it. They come out with their ARs strapped on them.
And can you, for the unfamiliar, give us the Ammon Bundy primer? Bundy Ranch, very anti-government, willing to take up arms, right?
Yeah, I was with him in video too. Actually, I was following them. He started the People's Rights Movement. And this is another thing one day I'd like to talk to you about. It's all over the nation. It's a very dangerous movement. That's where they believe the government's overreaching, I can make a phone call and 100 people will be out here to stop the officers from arresting you. But Ammon Bundy, I was with him with all the arrests in Boise, Idaho. They set the arrests up on purpose. He was in the Capitol, and a lady said that they wouldn't let her be a journalist up front, which you have to get permission to be up front and get approved first. Well, he grabs my phone and goes up there and sits there anyway, defying the rules, saying we have a constitutional right to be a journalist and be up front. That's where up front, like the Channel 7, they're allowed up there, the media. And I thought, this is a setup. Every one of them I was watching, they do it on purpose.
This is the Idaho State Capitol?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I became friends with the Capitol Police because I had caught somebody. They were scratching on Our Liberty Bell, the F word, USA, and I caught him on camera. So I started working with the Capitol Police to make sure that if I see anything or videotape anything illegal, I would contact them and turn it in. And I just want to debunk one lie about up that Capitol. They said that on my court records that I was part of that mob. They broke the door. An officer was pulling on the door. They were trying to get themselves in there that day. I was just there videotaping. I wasn't involved I never got involved in their protest. I was for everything they were doing, but I wasn't doing what they were doing. I was in the back just videoing.
This is the anti-government movement that has its epicenter in rural parts of Idaho, and it's
all over the country. It's everywhere now.
It's all over the country. But this predates your involvement in the J6 riots, and its context for all of your relationships that are now falling apart and actually turning against you. Because,
there's death threats. Yeah. I got death threats. I just got quite a few just the other day. Ammon Bundy, Michael Flynn, and Ivan Recklin, I don't say his name right, have all connected together now. And they are planning a revolt. They call it Ammon's Army, the People's Rights. They're all throughout the nation with all the militias they've hooked up, and they're going to have their own grand jury. I don't know if you've seen Ivan Reckon's list of who they want to arrest.
I have.
But
I have. It's like a star chamber to prosecute any dissidents in a second Trump term. It's terrifying stuff.
For treason. And I went to one of their trainings about it. I have a video if you haven't seen it yet on the training. And he says that the judge should be arrested and hung for treason. And that's their plan. It's scary.
So what brought you all the way around to supporting Vice President Harris and putting yourself out there at some risk, I would venture to say, in Boise, Idaho, openly campaigning for her?
Well, actually, like I shared, the facts that the sedition hunters and the real researchers brought into my J6 gaslighting space got me started. I wasn't pushing against Trump per se, but the more I found out the facts about January 6th narrative, I thought it's got to get out there. They're lying about everything. The officers did not open the doors. Nancy Pelosi was not responsible for the National Guard. So it was a slow process by learning facts. My critical thinking started coming back. Now, today, media is fact-checking everything that Trump says. They weren't doing it back then. You just listen to it. And then I'm talking to the lieutenant governor, people with 2 PhDs, senators, and Congress that are at Ammon Bundy's meetings. So why would I believe that they're lying, But I'm so glad that I've come around. And of course, I started talking about Project 2025. I told Abby Phillips on CNN 8 months ago, don't worry about Trump, worry about Project 2025. That's what you need to be scared about. And actually, I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The Family started in 1930. It was in 1953 that they started the National Prayer Breakfast. That's what Project 2025 is. We got to get rid of that National Prayer Breakfast because they're been embedded in this philosophy of theirs. They have a little book called Jesus. It's their Jesus. It's not the Christian Jesus. That is what's happening in our Congress right now.
Oh yeah, it's full blown Christian nationalism. With you being such a public voice for taking responsibility for your actions on January 6th, are there other J6ers who have reached out to you and said, I want to find, no.
I wish. I keep hoping. No, they like being a martyr and collecting a lot of money.
Talk to me about the money. How does that work?
It's a give, send, and go, and they claim it's for attorney fees. And so I'm trying to do research. So far, I found 63% have a court-appointed attorney. Why do they need this attorney? This money for what? Pay their fines, I guess, whatever. But the Proud Boys attorney told me he was upset because they had stole the money that was supposed to be going to him for his attorney fees. So they're lying. They're stealing money. I'm glad that some of the judges have been taking it for their fines, but it's all a scam. It's all a scam.
Why is it important that someone like you flies the flag, so to speak, in a place like Boise, Idaho, stands on a sidewalk with a Harris for President sign? You know what? Before you answer the question, I want to roll the clip because I find it adorable and inspiring, and I'm going to stitch a few together here because you had a few visitors. Here we go. Pam, why does it matter in a place like Idaho, which is probably going to vote for Trump in November, to still be out there and say you're proud to be on the side of right and good and the side of history when we end up looking back on this era decades from now?
I feel like I have this desperation because when you realize that Trump is a cult leader, he's a very dangerous man. And Project 2025, oh my God, it's like knowing that Hitler's going to take over. You feel desperate. And when she said do something, I thought, I can't do much, but I'll go out with my sign. And I got this attitude, I don't care, come throw eggs at me or whatever. I want people to know that we're standing with her and whatever I can do to help. And I can't volunteer for the Democratic Party like walking around because of my physical issues. Like you see, I had to sit down there, but because of the chemotherapy effect and medicine I'm taking. But I thought, I just love it. I love the fact that I'm standing up for goodness, for the right party now. My way of still making amends, and hopefully, and you would believe the people that came and hugged me and was taking pictures. They didn't know I was MAGA Granny, though. I told a few. It wasn't for that reason. They were so happy that somebody was out there with that sign. They were just jumping up and down, and you saw I took some pictures with some of them. I could have taken about 50 people pictures, but it was just a good feeling to be out there standing up for her. I can't wait to do it again this Saturday. I don't care what they say or do to me. Whatever. They've already threatened me. What are they going to do to me? Just kill me. I mean, yeah. Let them be mad.
The other thing that a demonstration like that does, a demonstration of support for a candidate, is it shows people who are otherwise feeling isolated and alone in their support that they're not isolated or alone. Sometimes it only takes one sign in a neighborhood for 10 others to show up. I've seen that all over Ohio, especially rural Ohio. When the first blue sign goes up, it turns out there are other Democrats around that you never knew about, but there's been such an air of menace in our politics coming from the right that it takes that first brave gesture to dispel it and to show people that you're not alone.
Yeah, and they're frightened here in Boise. They are. They're scared because they come out with their ARs and try to intimidate you. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to let their fear mongering stop me from doing what's right. I'm not going to allow it. We don't like bullies. I don't, and I'll stand right up next to you and say, sorry, I'm voting for Harris. But don't let that stop you. And, maybe we can get them out there so we can register people. I did run into one of the ladies that's involved in the Democrat Party. She said she'll be out this Saturday. So I hope they bring some flyers and stuff. Yeah.
One of the ironies in all of this is that MAGA is actually terrified of you. They are terrified of what you represent. Can you talk about what makes a cancer surviving J6 defendant grandmother so terrifying to this supposedly manly party?
Well, as a retired alcoholic drug counselor, I had to confront addicts and alcoholics with their disease. And you can't candy coat because it's their life that's in stake. And I don't do that. I don't try to make something sound right. You tell the facts and let them know the truth. But you get resistance because nobody wants to admit, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, I need help. Oh no, they'll fight you tooth and nail. And that's what they're doing with me. They're fighting me because they know I'm bringing the facts, not my facts, but all the research I've done. I'm just sharing and my own experience. Do not tell me that was a peaceful protest. I was there. So they gaslight you. They're continuing with their grift. You just got to stand your ground and keep giving them facts. Because later, when people were confronting me with my alcoholism 45 years ago, I didn't want anything to do with you. I was mad too. But I remembered what you said, and I eventually got back and got sober. So I think eventually the MAGAs, if they keep hearing it, Trump is a cult leader, dangerous cult leader. And Project 2025 wants to take away your democracy over and over and sharing some of those facts about Project 2025. They're not going to walk away the same. We're planting the seeds. Just plant the seeds.
Plant the seeds. Pam, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh.
Can't wait to talk again. And we will see you on Saturday. I will see you virtually, but I hope you get a ton of traffic.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.